In this episode, we're taking a look at the star-studded first solo album from the legendary Robbie Robertson. Stay with us. Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast. Music, movies, galore. We've got one ask. If you listen and you like what you're hearing, go ahead and give us a rating on your favorite podcast provider. On Spotify, 1 star each, so 5 stars will do us good. Apple Podcast, if you're listening, give us a rating. It's just easy. You don't have to write anything. A 5-star review would just go so far in helping us to continue to grow, right? We're in a growth mode right now.
It would be well appreciated. Yes.
Right? We're like teenage Groot right now. Right? There was like baby Groot for like a long time, and he was like small. I was like, when is he going to grow? And then all of a sudden he went from baby Groot.
Are we going to get to the big guy at the end of Guardians?
Yeah, we're going to get to the big, we're getting there. We're getting to full size
Groot.
Yes, the Hulk Groot. And we can only do that with your reviews. So if you would be so kind, you're already on the app. Just go ahead and throw us 5 stars. Would be so grateful. So if you could tell, a little bit of a melancholy mood, and this might be a little bit of a melancholy episode. We're going to try and do the best we can to celebrate. As of the recording of this episode, Robbie Robertson just passed away recently. Full disclosure, we always had a Robbie Robertson. Robbie Robertson was always on the radar, always on the books to do an episode. So we're not trying to cash in on anything. It's just this was a guy that is one of those albums that we talk about, like that. Why we do the podcast, right, Eric?
Yeah, and well, we did bring it up in our last Waltz episode, and I kind of thought about it. I was like, you know what? It occurred to me that we covered a lot of ground in that episode. We talked about solo work. We talked about his time with the band. We talked about, of course, the movie and the soundtrack. And but this was what's really special about this one. And Dean gave me the choice, by the way. You gave me the choice of either this one or Storyville, which is your preferred record.
Either one. You know what? I both of these.
Okay.
Honestly, like both.
So he's come around. He's come around.
No, both go hand in hand. This was the first.
I think
this was the first one. This was his first solo outing. Storyville was kind of the refining.
Yeah.
Of what Robbie, of Robbie Robertson as a solo artist. Okay, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Okay, so with this, we both came to this album, not at the same time necessarily, but we both connected with it. I had heard, I think it was Showdown at Big Sky on NEW, loved the song. Had no idea at the time who Robbie Robertson was. You hear the name Robbie Robertson, it's like,
yeah, he was always a name that was kicking it, like you've heard in rock and roll on radio or whatever.
Yeah, and of course the DJs at the time were like, Robbie Robertson is coming out with a solo record. I'm like, well, what band is he in? And how naive we were, or I was at the time, and of course you come to find out, and it's like, so I always considered this album to be more of a celebratory album in a way, because of the people involved, the connections that he was making, because he hadn't done anything in quite a few years, right? I mean, it was the last Waltz was
very unique. Yeah, let's get into I think we need to talk a little. We'll spend a little time of last Waltz and what Robbie Robertson was doing up until the release of this album. So what we're talking about is this is Robbie Robertson's first solo album, and it's just simply titled Robbie Robertson. It was released in October of 1987. All songs were written or co-written by Robbie Robertson. He wrote most of them by himself. Produced by Robbie Robertson and Daniel Lanois. Now, Daniel Lanois, this producer, is very integral to this album.
Yes.
Vis-a-vis his connections to other artists that he was worked with and was currently working with. This is a really great story about this album.
Yeah.
It only hit number 38 on Billboard for as lauded as this was, and this was a return of the lyricist of the band. 3 music videos, no singles in the Billboard charts. It was something like the rock chart, but nothing that was in the mainstream Billboard chart.
Yeah.
And certified gold, 500,000 copies. So. Yeah, a lot of people might have missed it. Like you said, if you don't know who Robbie Robertson was, it's gonna come and go. And I think I need to retell the story I think I told the story a little bit in the last Waltz episode, but I think it's important to retell the connection of how I came to this magical album. And this person was, I used to work, briefly, used to work in a pizzeria. I used to deliver pizza, I used to make pizza, I used to do all that kind of stuff. That was the career track. And the guys that owned the pizzeria were hippies. Like, they were like really, like they were kind of already, like, one of them was already in his 50s and this was in the mid 80s. So he was like, a young guy in the 60s. And this one guy, Ronnie, he was one of the owners. He was into the band. He was really into it. And delivering pizza, you're working till, like, they would close at like 11 o'clock at night, the pizzeria. So I'm delivering till 11:30 if stuff are coming in. And these guys lived, the pizzeria was in Ardsley, but these guys lived in Queens, but they would stay there and just hang out at the after it closed.
Yeah.
Ronnie, one of the owners, got his hands on a big screen projection TV, and they had like a party room. So he put it in there. And next door to the pizzeria was a video rental place, right? And he used to always go on about, oh, you got to watch The Last Waltz. We got to watch The Last Waltz. What the hell is The Last Waltz? I kind of knew of it as a title and as a thing.
Yeah.
I heard, the band. Yeah, I'd known about it. We got to watch this. We got to watch. So one night it's like late. It's like 11 o'clock. I'm done. He's like, oh, I got it. So it was like midnight and we watched like The Last Waltz. And I walked away from it just like, go see, you now go refer to our Last Waltz episode. We won't go into The Last Waltz, but I walked away like, wow. And that was probably 85, 86. It was right in this area. So I like the pump was primed for this album to come out and for me to know who he was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it was like a part, like the Cosmic Tumblers kind of fell into place where I had just kind of got an appreciation for the band. And then this came out.
Yeah.
And it was,
that is a great story. And I mean, I knew The Last Waltz as well. I only knew it by title. I knew that Martin Scorsese had directed it. I think I might have seen it at the Pickwick. They might have shown it at like
show.
Like Saturday nights. They used to show like all the rock movies and stuff. I think I might have seen it before. But again, I didn't make the connection. Names at that point were, I was still getting to know people. But this album came for me. It was, and as soon as I knew that, the producer, who Daniel Lanois, as soon as I knew that he was co-producing it with him, I was like, okay, I'm in, because as you know, I'm a big fan of, we covered So with Peter Gabriel. He produced that album.
Which was the year before.
That's right. And I think
so
most likely concurrently working with Gabriel, probably during the sessions of that album, perhaps, maybe brought him in a little, like around the same time. I know U2 were involved, and with the Joshua Tree. I mean, these were very huge albums. So it's not surprising that this album didn't make a big splash. It almost feels like it just kind of came in between.
It's like the redheaded stepchild.
That's right. Yeah.
Daniel Lanois became this producer, in the 80s was a big time producer. Like I said,
Canadian, and I think
produced So, which was Peter Gabriel's breakthrough album. Right, a monster album for Gabriel.
That's right.
Robbie Robertson in 1983 kind of announces he's, so after The Last Waltz, he had done some acting. He was in a movie called Carney. Deep friendship with Martin Scorsese. So he was working on film scores for Martin Scorsese, either executive producing the score, writing score, selecting the music. He really he was looking for a new challenge. He wasn't looking to go back out on the road. So he's doing that for a while. And then he said, yeah, I'm ready to kind of reemerge and start recording again. That was in 83. He was working, by the time, so 83, he announces it. He's ready to start working on an album. And then he had to go do The Color of Money. He had to go work on the score for Color of Money. So he started with Lanois. But I think So was already done by then. So it's kind of like, Robertson was getting ready to do everything, connects with Daniel Lanois, like I said, a fellow Canadian. But then Lanois had to leave and go work with U2 because he was already working with them on the Joshua Tree. So he was kind of like doing like a couple of things at once, Daniel Lanois. So he's like, listen, I got to go do some work with U2. And that's when Robbie Robertson did The Color of Money. He's like, okay, well, I'm going to do The Color of Money. Let me work on that. And then we'll kind of get back together. Let's go through the players on this album.
Oh yeah.
Because this is like, this is a who's, and a lot of people do, the people that drag this album, or if anybody has a problem with it, is they're like, it's too Peter Gabriel centric, right? And you either have a problem with that or you don't. And it's not, I think it's an overstatement.
I think so too, is considering he only really plays on 2 songs.
Yes.
But I understand that statement. I do.
Yeah.
It's the production.
Yes.
It's that familiar production of Lenoir. It's not
production
Gabriel
and some of some of the guys he uses too, right? So you've got Tony Levin.
Yes.
On bass for a lot of the tracks. Manu Katché, who's a percussionist and a drummer on most of the tracks.
Drummer, one of my favorites. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Garth Hudson from the band appears on 2 tracks, and Rick Danko appears on 1 track. Sonny Got Caught in the Moonlight, which oh my god. Anyway, like I said, Gabriel's on a couple of tracks. Abraham Laboriel on bass. He was big in the 80s. You saw him on a lot of session work that he did.
Yeah.
Terry Bozzio from Missing Persons.
That's right.
Two things. All of U2 appear on 2 tracks, right? So you've got The Edge, Adam Clayton, Larry Mullen Jr., and Bono on 2 tracks. The Bodines, criminally underrated in the 80s. Let's point you to their album Outside Looking In, which came out in the same year as this. You Want a Companion Piece of Americana? Boom. Maria McKee from the 80s group Lone Justice was on this album. Ivan Neville, also son of Aaron Neville, or one of the Neville brothers. It might not be Aaron, but Ivan Neville's on this. So this is like you said, a who's who of contemporary artists that really helped Robbie Robertson kind of not update his sound, but kind of bring forth what he was trying to do. And you get an album that just sounds sonically, this is just gorgeous.
Yeah.
There's not a misstep. It's 87. There's none of the electronic drums. He didn't go down that path.
Mm-hmm.
And this album is timeless because of that. It's timeless because of it.
I totally agree. And I think, again, it's that collaborative spirit that, first of all, I don't think they had met before, Robertson and Lenoir, but they connected in the sense that they both like to experiment. So, and of course they're fellow Canadians. So, but on the other hand, I'm looking at it too as, I always admired Robbie Robertson's ability to kind of adapt and to kind of see, pick his head up and look around as to what's happening on the music scene.
Yeah. Be open, open to it,
and be open and completely open to it. And that's what I feel like this album is. It's Lenoir working with all of these people. Perhaps, I don't know whose idea it was to bring these people on. It could have been both. It could have been, Robbie Robertson saying, "Hey,
well, here's the story. Let's get into it. Let's get into it." So they reconvene after The Color of Money. They start working on this album, on Robbie Robertson's album. Robbie Robertson. His album. This one.
Yeah.
This one. This album right here. If you're watching on YouTube, there it is.
And by the way, that is just a fantastic cover. It really is.
I love the tone of it, the kind of sepia brown.
Yep.
Anyway, so he's working on this album. Robbie Robertson's writing songs, and he's like, not a concept album, but he goes, these songs take place in a place called the Shadowland.
Mm-hmm.
And me as the lyricist, I'm kind of drifting through these different areas of the Shadowland, kind of singing about my observations. So it's a great way to kind of look at this album. That
very mystic point of view.
Yeah, mystic point of view. Yep. So he starts working on it, right? They're rocking and rolling.
Yep.
And then Lenoir says, "Listen, I got to go back. I got to go back to Ireland because I still got some stuff to do with U2.
Mm-hmm.
I got, these guys were still in the midst of the Joshua Tree. So just kind of remember where U2 was at this point. This was like the Bono that was about to explode onto the scene, right? This was the U2 that had done Pride in the Name of Love, but With or Without You and Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For hadn't come out yet. They were making that.
Yes. Yeah.
So Robbie Robertson's kind of fooling around. He's like, all right, let me, I'm going to fly out to England. I'm going to fly out to Dublin or to Ireland, wherever they're doing it. Right. He had some score sheets left over from The Color of Money. He had some horn arrangements left over. He goes, I'm going to bring this with me. So he goes out to where they're recording with U2, and he shows them that. And they come up with the first song that you hear with U2 is called the Sweet Fire of Love, which was basically a 22-minute jam based on this horn sheet that they had. They kind of just made this a 22-minute kind of jam, and then they kind of cut it down.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They took the horn arrangement again and actually used it for another song. They did Testimony. So he got two songs out of one like kind of horn arrangement sheet that was left over from The Color of Money. So that was that. So he kind of did that. And then Robbie Robertson's like, okay, let me go to England and look up Peter Gabriel. So that's kind of how he did. He kind of did it in reverse, or you think it would have been Gabriel first, but he went out to see Lanois, who was working with U2 to kind of catch up with him, and then flew to see Gabriel. Now, one of the bittersweet things about this album is Richard Manuel, who was keyboard, piano player, keyboardist, and sometimes drummer for the band.
Mm-hmm.
He had taken his own life the year before. It was a big loss for Robbie Robertson, a big loss for the band. It was kind of like really. Mm-hmm. So he had written a song called Fallen Angel, which is what opens the album. And Robbie Robertson went to Peter Gabriel and said, listen, can you, would you like to help me on this? And you get Gabriel stacked vocals, used in a way that it's, not very, very un-Peter Gabriel-ish. If you have preconceived notions
it's angelic.
Peter Gabriel, it's very, very un-Gabriel.
It always is. I mean, that song, I don't listen to it that often, but when I do, it
gives you. Yeah, I'm getting tingled. Yeah, I'm getting chills just the way it starts. The way the album opens. It opens with this song, and it's like a heartbeat almost. Like the rhythm's like a
it's very rhythmic. It's very sort of,
and it feels like it's a heartbeat that's kind of pulsing.
Indigenous,
and everything kind of everything just kind of the percussion kind of comes up. Keyboards kind of come up, it kind of builds,
mm-hmm.
And then you get Robbie Robertson's vocal. And that's the thing, is we talked about it in the last waltz, is Robbie Robertson didn't sing in the band. He wrote the songs, and there's some dispute about who, other band members' contribution, which we won't get into, but he was the lyricist. But he never sang.
Mm-hmm.
And famously in the last waltz, his mic was turned off because he really wasn't a good singer, supposedly. You're either gonna like this or you're not gonna like it. He's got a gravelly voice, but it is very soulful. It is very emotive.
It is.
And his lyrics are fucking they're unmatched. His lyrics on this album and Storyville are unmatched. Like, he just has a way of, as a Canadian, the band invented like Americana style music.
That's right.
Them and Creedence were like the two. Yeah. And his lyrics on this album, just like you sit there and you listen to it and it just connects, and it's,
well, it's no wonder that Dylan sought them out to have him as his backing band. I mean, you can't get any more Americana than Dylan. I mean, but yeah, he's also channeling his Native American heritage as well there. And I always love that trajectory that he has with all of his solo records, that he's sort of such a tapestry of just a little bit of blues and with Storyville, he's paying, tribute to New Orleans, and he's, that he made those two albums. One was a soundtrack to a documentary about
the indigenous, about Native Americans. Yeah. He was he very connected to it.
And then he even went a little electronica in the 90s with, under the
music from the
Red Boy.
Music from the underground.
That's right. And and then of course, working in 2010, which was a complete thrill for me. I had no idea that he had been working on a new record. And he comes out, with Clairvoyant.
Cinematic, right? Oh no, had to be Clairvoyant.
Had to be Clairvoyant,
which was great. And then he came out with Cinematic after that, like his.
That's right.
A couple of years later,
I thought he was pretty much done at this point.
Yeah.
Right. So of course I'm going to share.
He's in no rush. Yeah. He said it. He goes, I'm not interested in touring. I'm not interested in that kind of stuff. He goes, I want to do things.
But when he did release Clairvoyant, though, there was what was it? There was a band at the time, and I think you saw this band. Was it
which one?
Dawes? Yeah. That was the band that he toured with for the Clairvoyant.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Oh, I didn't know that.
Like
Wow.
the Bodine, like using the Bodines on this record. Dawes was like his backing band for the Clairvoyant tour. Yeah.
See that?
So they played some dates, and I don't know if it was successful or not, but I mean, but that, again, just that extra nugget. And of course, Clapton played on that record, and did quite a few songs with him, as I recall, and it another beautiful record. I just love that.
He's got a knack.
He's got some type of
he's got some type of knack for storytelling.
Yeah.
Even though he's from Canada, the story, he tells a story about, being on the bayou or the Delta or, I mean, he lived it. I mean, he was really, him and Levon Helm were great friends. And a lot of those stories probably came from Levon Helm, and a lot of that learning about that type of life.
True.
And tour and being with the band since the 60s and touring all those places, you kind of get steeped in it as well.
Well, he moved to Arkansas pretty early on in his life. I mean,
and they were steeped in the blues with all those artists. So on this album, this is kind of like a travelogue through the Shadowlands of his observations. And his vocal style is, I love it. There's just something about it. Sometimes it's talky, like Somewhere Down the Crazy River. It's very much like almost like a spoken word with some singing in between, but it's, he's almost like he's monologuing.
Well, he's got a great speaking voice.
He's got that gravel. He's got that deep timbre, not way down low, but he's got that timbre to his voice, that lower register. And
that's right. And
I could listen to him. He should have done audiobooks.
It's wonderful.
I could listen to him narrate, because you listen to him in interviews and you just love hearing him. He has just got a great,
and like you just said voice. About a knack of storytelling. He always has. Like I said before, he just knows rock and roll like no other. I think that just being into the history of it and being enthusiastic about talking about that it's not for everyone, that this lifestyle is, and he's not afraid to go there either. And it almost killed him. It almost killed all the members of the band at that time. He's like, this is not a lifestyle that everybody should pursue, because it's being on the road and it's
he's not afraid to have that cynicism in his lyrics, but not in a mean way, but just
but a truthful way.
An understanding of it.
It's a very pragmatic point of view, but also he's but elevating it to that level of telling a story. And
and then he tempers it with his vocal stylings on this album. It's. The thing I noticed about this album, we talk about track arrangements. This is one of those albums where it's slow, fast, slow, fast, slow, fast. It is. It's kind of, which is nice because it really it allows you to appreciate the slower songs and how he takes his time with them, just like Broken Arrow.
Mm-hmm.
That song can absolutely wreck me. Like that song, the way he does it. Mm-hmm. Now, Rod Stewart did a version of it like 4 years later.
Hey, you got to give him credit,
No, I can't.
No, but I mean, to pick a song that probably nobody had really heard at this point, because this out, like I said, this album did not make a big splash. So
his version is horrible. It's Rod Stewart-ified, and it like. The way Robbie Robertson sings Broken Arrow, you can feel it. It feels like it's hot.
Yeah, no, there's no comparison.
Like it feels like he's in the desert, and you feel the passion in it.
Yeah.
And it's like and so listening to this album again kind of brought me experiencing that kind of music for the first time. Again, being into pop music and ELO and stuff like that. It's known for its technical prowess. And then kind of diving into something like this at that time and having someone who really kind of just has a unique way of delivering the lyrics,
mm-hmm.
a unique tone in his voice, and then unmatched with the lyrical content was just like, wow. I'm like, holy shit. Like it really kind of cuts you down, if you're a music fan. For me, at least it did. Maybe other people feel other way,
No, I feel exactly the same way. And again, it's that eclectic nature of it. I think that's the word that I was looking for. It's so eclectic, and it's so. I love when I just love a full, like, collaborative spirit. I love that to death. I don't know when I'd like to think that everybody came in with the same enthusiasm to play on this album. I'm really, I hope that was the case, because it shows, because the music,
I think so.
It reflects. It's not just people just coming in and doing their best. I think there was a sort of spiritual.
Yeah, I think they were realizing that there was like the reemergence of Robbie Robertson was something special, and the fact that, like I said, U2 was not that far away from Rattle and Hum, which was their exploration of America and that type of a thing. So they were kind of, and this may have even helped to color that, because right after Broken Arrow, you get Sweet Fire of Love, which is an out and out U2 song. It is,
of course,
it's got the jangling edge guitar, like. It is Robbie Robertson U2ified, and it is great though, because you've got that Bono from the 80s with that soaring vocal when he had that really impassioned, he used to have that really impassioned way of singing, like when he sang like in the name of like Pride in the Name of Love.
Yep.
Like this is the Bono that you get, is that kind of that heartfelt singing, and maybe that's what you're talking about, is that song is just a celebration.
Yeah.
And Bono and U2 really kind of help carry Robbie Robertson, like kind of really bring him out, because Robbie Robertson is really kind of singing also, really trying to, he can't match Bono, and he's not trying to. And actually on the album, it's really cool because Robbie Robertson is on one side of the mix, and Bono's on the other side of the mix. He's so one's in the left side and one's in the right side. So it was really cool listening to it. And you hear like Robbie Robertson here on the right, and then Bono singing on the left, and it's just this is what is magical about music.
Yeah,
is like you said, that enthusiasm. People wanting to kind of contribute to this album. Like I said, Bodines were nobodies, but it was a big thing for them, or it was a big thing that Robbie Robertson wanted to work with them and kind of bring them into the fold,
Yeah, and such a new band, and bringing and just sort of giving that sort of leverage, but not in a way to we're selling Bodines here. It's like they just flowed with the songs. They blended in, and it just and again, Sammy Bodine or what?
Sammy Lannis,
fantastic vocal. I mean, some people might disagree, because he has a very, very high register, but just interesting. And that's the thing. It's like, and paired with Robbie's lower register, but not a great singer. You just have these voices, and it's almost like a chant. It's almost like it's
you really hear him on Showdown at Big Sky. You really hear him in the upper register. You really hear Sammy Lannis.
That's
in
song,
the upper register.
My God, that song.
It's got the funky bass.
That fucking bass line. Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, it really cooks, and that's a great thing, is that Robbie wasn't kind of saying, he wasn't letting the fact that he never sang like on an album before, he wasn't really letting that hold him back. He's kind of like, I can do the softer stuff, was more in his wheelhouse, because I think his voice really kind of hits you there.
Yeah.
But he went for it with the other material as well. He wasn't afraid to go for it. And Showdown at Big Sky, Hell's Half Acre, American Roulette. Those are the songs. Those are more like the up-tempo songs, and he's there, and his guitar is right there with him. I mean, these are like the up-tempo stuff is rocking stuff. It's not weird. It's not experimental. It is just, you got U2 on two of them. So you know what you're getting there. And then like I said, American Roulette and Sweet Fire of Love, Testimony, which he named his album. He named his autobiography Testimony. Hell's Half Acre, really good, just great musicianship. Like you said, great energy, excited to work with him. And then of course, Rick Danko makes an appearance on another one of my favorite songs, Sonny Got Caught in the Moonlight.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Just, like, it's just like the lyrics. It's just the way the songs are constructed.
Yeah.
Rick Danko singing just as a backing vocalist, really, and really singing way above Robbie, because Robbie's got that lower thing, and Rick Danko has that and can have that angelic voice also.
Yep.
And it's just,
and Gabriel making another vocal cameo in Testimony on the last track, which is nice too. Also, we didn't really, talk about his guitar playing too, which is extremely extremely creative. He's a craftsman. He knows exactly, these are the kind of guitar players that I love, that serve the song. He's not overbearing. He knows how to do a really great solo.
Yeah, he's not indulgent. He's not an
No, but
overindulgent soloist.
it is. I often compare him to people like Mark Knopfler, who just know how to wield that axe, as it were, in the music, and blend it in, and just, it gives it mood, it gives it atmosphere. He's just one of the greats.
He knows how to use the tools in the toolbox, just like in Testimony, you've got the horns there.
Yeah.
And that's the only time the horns really show up. And it really kind of punctuates that song. It kind of gives that song a little extra kick as the closer. It's almost like a rave up Testimony, because you got the horns, and he's wailing, literally wailing. And then you've got Bono there. It's just like a whole, like, kind of closing of the album. It's a great choice as a kind of like a, we're having a, here's our last song, and we're just going to kind of really let it go and really let it out there. And that's he really, listening to the album is just kind of really a personal thing with this album. This album, some of his stuff a lot of his stuff is hard to listen to with other people for me, just because a lot of it I listened to by myself and made those connections. It's not like party music or,
No, it's not. It's one of these, but it's one of those albums that you and
it's personal stuff to me.
Definitely. We share probably 100% the same feeling, the same, attitude about it. There's no, I like this better than that, kind of thing. Like, sometimes we agree to disagree in a lot of things, but with this album, it's, this was definitely one of our biggest.
Yeah.
And it was, and again, not a big album. A lot of people, it's very underrated.
And I think it hits me more now. I think that's what it is.
I think so.
At the time, I didn't have the feelings that I have about the album that I have now. There's something about maturing, about getting old, like, the stuff kind of hits you. It's not nostalgic. Like, this album isn't nostalgic. It's more of an emotional response than it is a nostalgic. I listen to this, I'm like, oh, like, sometimes like my heart literally sometimes aches, like, listening to this album, just hearing his voice.
Because
not because he passed away, but just because of the way he emotes.
But when you think about it, though, like, he was already set to retire, back in the day. Like, he was, it's like, I'm sick of the road. I don't want to do this anymore, kind of thing. And it's just like, for him to come back in such a great way, in our opinion, I urge people who haven't heard this album, if you're a big fan of the band or a big fan of Dylan, or, give this album a shot if you haven't heard it. But some people, it's the 80s. It's, it's just another one of those records that, that 70s artists coming into the 80s kind of. This is not that one of those albums. This is an album that I feel was one of the best.
Yeah, he did it the right way. Yeah, he didn't
this day, I knew it then and I know it now. I'm so confident in this record.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
It's just one of my all-time favorites.
He didn't fall into any of the 80s traps.
Yeah.
That some of those 70s legacy artists fell into, of trying to, quote unquote, modernize their sound.
Right.
He didn't modernize his sound. He updated his sound by getting with the right kind of artists at the time that represented what he was trying to achieve. It wasn't through technology. It was through people.
That's
right. I want to connect with these people.
That is so right. Yep.
I don't want to connect with the DX7 synthesizer. I want to connect with. Well, honestly, right? It wasn't about using the tools.
Right.
It was about, this is a very organic album. There's none of that 80s, synthesizer-y stuff on here. It's very atmospheric. It's very percussive. It's very, like you said, kind of like just like a tapestry of or an audio landscape that he's creating through in each song,
If you were to equate it to film, I could see, because he, did a little bit of acting, working with Martin Scorsese, of course, and I'm sure, Marty's probably telling him all kinds of stories, filling his head with like the cinematic thing.
Yeah.
You listen to, I think of some of the films at the time that came out around that time in the 80s. I'm thinking of Val Kilmer's film,
Thunderheart,
and films of that ilk, like just sort of like that that sort of Western noir kind of thing.
Desert.
Yeah.
The guy, the drifter or the loner, kind of going through a town and kind of experiencing things, or having a passionate love affair or love, like that's what a lot of these songs are kind of they kind of emote that, and they're like little mini. Each one is a little mini story. Like American Roulette is about James Dean, Elvis Presley, and Marilyn Monroe. Literally about them. So yeah, he's well steeped in it. And you talked about not touring and stuff around this time, give or take. The band, that was where the acrimony was. Is no one in the band except for Robbie Robertson really wanted to stop touring, but he said the habits are out of control. So they kind of reapproached him and said, listen, you want to come back and come back to the band, and because the intent was never to really break up. It was make more records, but kind of be done as a touring thing. And he said, I saw an interview. It wasn't a recent interview, but I saw it recently. And he said, I kind of looked at the situation that was going on with them, and it hadn't really changed. Those things were still there. And so he said, I'm not going to partake, but by all means, go. Use the name of the band. You guys got to make a living. Do it. Like, you have my blessing. So he never had a problem with them going out and touring as the band without him saying, oh, well, you're not, it's not without me. He's like, go do it. It's not for me. Like, it's still not for me based on what I'm seeing, and yeah, Richard Manuel had still had issues, obviously, that led to his taking of his life. Rick Danko was still struggling with substance abuse. And I'm sure Levon Helm was a pretty heavy drinker. Mm-hmm. That's not a surprise. Yeah.
Oh, well.
So yeah, so he kind of was, like I said, was looking for a challenge, which led to the collaborations with Scorsese. I'm just going to run down some of the work that he's done, that film work that people are not aware of. This is, again, either doing original music, executive soundtrack producer, supervisor, whatever it is.
Film researcher, music researcher. Yeah.
For it. So ready? Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
Raging Bull, King of Comedy, Color of Money, Casino, Crossing Guard, Any Given Sunday, Gangs of New York, Shutter Island, Wolf of Wall Street, The Irishman, and his last film, Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yeah.
Which hasn't come out yet, which is about indigenous Native Americans. So it's very apropos that his final collaboration with his good friend, Martin Scorsese, he composed music for that film, which hasn't even come out yet. The trailers are just, so he was working while he was sick. He was working, and him and Martin Scorsese lived together for a long time. And in the 70s, Scorsese was having problems.
Mm-hmm.
They're both having problems. They kind of came together, was living together, got each other straightened out. The collaboration that not a lot of people know. Everyone thinks that Scorsese is kind of a force unto himself, and he is. But I don't know if Robbie Robertson is the muse or vice versa. I don't know what it is, but those two, you heard the list that I just went through of the collaborations they did. This guy's just an amazing talent who always wanted just something different he wanted to keep being challenged. He said the road doesn't do it. You go out there and some people love it. He said, I got nothing against it. Some people can do it. But he wanted to do something different. And that's where it led to this reemergence in 87.
One of the
this beautiful, beautiful album.
All-time great elder statesman.
Yeah.
Of just, I wouldn't even just say rock, of just music, period.
Yeah. Steeped in it.
Yeah.
In the lore. And he had the stories, and he lived a lot of the stories in the 60s,
Mm-hmm.
I just saw a quick story about his guitar in the last waltz. It was it's a bronze guitar.
Yeah.
It was that he actually had that dipped in bronze for the last waltz. It was a red Stratocaster, and he said he hated the color red. He never wanted to play a red guitar. But when he saw it in, I think it was in New York City, was it Norm's Rare Guitars? He picked it up and he played it. And he goes, "Oh my God, I love this guitar, but I hate it because I never want to play a red guitar." But he goes, "It's calling to me." So he bought it in 73. And then for the last waltz, he had it dipped in bronze. And he said, this will be the last time this guitar gets played. We'll make it something special. Mm-hmm. And then there's a little thing on YouTube about this guy that got it. And then kind of finished it, redid the neck because it was all worn down, and then he brought Robbie Robertson in, and Robbie opened it up, and he's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe it!" All the original knobs were there, and he said, "I used to have the knobs like this because I used to play." So, just that, like you said, you put it the right way, like kind of like the elder statesman. There is some revisionist history that there's claimed to go on, right? You read his book testimony,
right? To be fair, I started it. And now that, not because he's gone, but I always wanted to get back to it. And I know that it only deals with that part of his life.
Up till the last waltz, I think they said it stopped.
That's right. I when I first bought it, I thought it was, dealing with the later stuff as well. Yeah. But,
so there's some back and forth between, the camps of Robbie didn't write everything. How could he have written everything? How could he have known about the Civil War? How could he have written, the night they drove Old Dixie down? That sounds like Levon Helm, so there was, stories being lobbed on both sides. You got to kind of,
and I just read a great story about, the weight, when he's talking about Nazareth, he's talking about Nazareth, PA. Which my brother and sister live right in Lehigh Valley. They live right near there. So it's, but again, there's that ambiguity to his stuff. It can be something, but it also something, could be very biblical or very, legend or, and he had that ability to kind of blur the line there, so
that's what that Americana music was about, is kind of about those experiences, like the quote unquote American experience. And I think this album is an extension of that. I think, let's look at it this way. If Robbie Robertson didn't write all this stuff, how come the band never had any hits afterwards? They put out 3 albums after they broke up. Nothing really came of it. So you can kind of, let's kind of lay the cards out on the table, and then you listen to this album, and you listen to Storyville, and you listen to this other stuff, and the proof is in the pudding.
That's
right. The lyrical content is there. It is not lightweight stuff. It is stuff that is that hits you, or that hit me. So again, I'm sure they helped. I'm sure that hit us both, and I'm sure the band helped out, and I'm sure there was collaboration going on. But I have to believe that Robbie Robertson was the primary songwriter, and he probably got the primary credit. And when you're making the royalties on that, you start, if you sign a bad deal or you kind of be like, okay, then you kind of, start to not to be too happy about it. You had
mentioned that him and Levon were good friends, and that's most likely true. But I know in his later years, though, he was very disgruntled, and he was always he was very he was throwing shade at Robbie.
Oh yeah,
for whatever reason. He takes the credit for writing this song, but I had a hand in that, and kind of thing. And so just some ugly stuff that you just
kind of like Michael Love and Brian Wilson, kind of like that whole Beach Boys thing. It's I actually helped this, but I didn't get the credit because he was the thing. It's like, all right,
that's right.
It doesn't diminish this album, and like I said, his first 2 albums are complementary to each other. They're great. They're great back to back or dual listens. Because I think he even, he continues on Storyville. He continues that storytelling, aspect of things, And actually, I picked up Storyville. Was it earlier this year or last year? I had to order it. I had to order the vinyl from Italy because it didn't really come out in the U.S. It was by 91, I think, when it came out, albums were kind of already on the decline. So I had to order it from overseas, and it was taking a while to get here. I'm like, oh shit, man, this thing's gonna come all chewed up and destroyed. And I had to pay a lot of money because you pay a lot of money because it's a hard album to find, and then it was coming from Europe. And it's coming, and then finally one day it showed up, and it was it was in great condition. I'm like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, they even re-released both albums together.
As
a special package with 4 extra tracks on it. Which is nice. So, again, there's that, like you say, it's almost like a follow-up, a really great follow-up, but it was Robbie now stepping into the full on, okay, now that I'm back.
Yeah. Really feeling comfortable.
I'm making my own album now. And the concept of really diving into the whole New Orleans thing, I thought was brilliant too. We had some great people on that record as well.
Yeah. Bruce Hornsby and
Alan Toussaint, who was famous for, of course, the Neville brothers again, appeared
back in action with them.
That's right.
Yeah, he really, he's able to do it genuinely. It doesn't, what that's the thing is it doesn't seem performative. So he wanted to, he steeped himself into that whole genre of music and working with those artists. And I think those artists, he has enough credibility where it's kind of like, come on down. I think also he's got that authenticity and that credibility that when he wants to do that kind of stuff, people are going to kind of embrace it and be like, Robbie. Yeah, of course. I think he's just kind of like he was one of the good guys, and I think, I think a lot of people, I think that's why with his passing, all of a sudden, a lot of people are talking about him, but probably wondering why. I guess if you're not into the band or weren't into this thing, it's like, okay, why is everybody all of a sudden talking about this guy, Robbie Robertson? But if you've been sleeping on him for all these years, it's time to wake up. And it's time to, it's not too late. This music is here. This album, his first album,
always will be
just self-titled. It's just it's so special, and like I said, when it was a shock. I didn't know he was ill. So, when
I didn't either.
When they announced it too, it was like my heart really was just started aching. I'm like, God, with the freshness of Sinead O'Connor, just, she was so young, and he was 80. So God bless him. But I think, we need to talk about, I think we're coming to the era where our idols are no longer going to be with us. Like, I think we need to face, it's shocking each time. It's, Glenn Fry and Tom Petty. And
I'm trying to pace
each
myself,
one of these is shocking, and I think we, as I was listening to this, we're in a unique situation here. We were young enough to be around for some of the birth of rock and roll in the early days. And all these guys were young, and we were around in the 70s, and they were in their prime. And now they're not, they're still in their prime because a lot of them still tour and everything, but they're, some of them have longevity. Like Mick Jagger doesn't seem like he's ever going to stop, Roger Daltrey doesn't, these guys never seem like they're going to stop, but time is not on their side to coin the Rolling Stones.
It's not kind, whether you like to think so or not.
Jeff Beck, all these heroes that we know and love. I'm starting to have to wrap my mind around, like, this is, we're entering an age of, that probably people that played rock and roll in the 60s probably never thought they would see, probably never thought this would continue into their 70s and their 80s and continue these careers, right? It was always like in the 60s, it was like a lark. Let's put a band together and let's,
that's
new
right.
type of music. And they've become so beloved to us, right? And they've been with us throughout our lives. The Beatles have been with us throughout our lives, if you're into music, almost part of what you are.
It blows my mind when you lose somebody like Robbie, who, like you say, he lived to the, age of 80. But then you think back to when John Lennon got killed, and you think back to when
he was only 40.
And these artists that just died suddenly, and just, the early days of Morrison and Hendrix, and just because of the excess and because of their habits and such. And these guys were survivors in a way, I'm sure they obviously partook as well.
If you look at Robbie Robertson in The Last Waltz, he's on some substances, because he's rail thin. He is rail thin. Not Clapton, real thin, but rail thin.
Clapton had a nice statement saying he goes, I'll see you soon. Which gave me a little bit of a shudder, because he outlived them all, man. Like, who's left?
Yeah.
As far as guitar players, his fellow axemen, there's Jeff Beck is gone, maybe Townsend and Page, and there's
Yeah.
Gilmore. I mean, I never thought, in a million years that, because the last time I saw Robertson on an interview, just maybe last year, maybe a couple of years ago, and he looked good.
Well, looked like Robbie.
Yeah, I mean, do we really know what he died of? I mean, is it been confirmed?
It was prostate cancer.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So he'd been battling it for a little while, and you fight the good fight. 80 is young. I mean, I said 80 had a good run, but like you said, for what he had the foresight to say, I need to stop this. Like he kind of, a lot of these guys don't see the handwriting on the walls. They get out luckily, like the Eagles, like they what the Eagles put themselves through to come out on the other side. That was luck. Joe Walsh, the excesses. That that's not the norm. Robbie Robertson saw it and said, "This is not a sustainable thing.
Yeah,
I got to get out of here." And then so he kind of receded. Let me do other things. Let me work on movies. Let me do a little acting. He was in that movie, The Crossing Guard, with Jack Nicholson. He was Angelica Houston's husband, I think, in that movie, right? Like the second husband, I think. So yeah, I mean, he dabbled. Yeah. He did a little this, a little bit of that, and did things that made him happy. And I'm glad he was able to feel comfortable enough to come back out of his musical retirement, and that you and I were kind of on the rise, in our musical education. We were kind of coming, like we kind of knew who we liked. We liked our Genesis, we liked our ELO, we liked our Fleetwood Mac, and then ready for, so we had our foundation built, and now we were ready. Like this just came kind of at it like a lightning bolt, and kind of like, whoa, this is different. It's new. It's not this, not like the stuff I listen to, not like the ELO, not like the other stuff, and hits you in such a way. And the fact that, what, almost 40 years later, 34 years later, something like that, it can hit even harder, that it's got that in those grooves of this record is something in there that this man put down on there. And maybe it's better off being one of our albums, that people don't know about,
Yeah. I'd like to think that, I'd like to
but
think
I think
that.
I think that we need to share. I think, if you got to be in the right space for this album, and let it wash over you. And it's something special. And he was something special. He was one of the good ones.
Yeah. And I and again, I posted it on Facebook. I talked about it last Waltz. I did get to see him, even if it was just for 2 songs.
Better than me, more than I did.
It was such a thrill, such a pleasure just to see his face, because I saw him at the Crossroads Festival in 2007, and I saw him not just performing, but throughout the day, the vantage point that I had at that show was to see the artist all coming out and watching their fellow artists perform, all the sets. And Robbie was there I saw him a lot. He was standing there pretty much half the day, and he was watching all the great acts and just loving it. And you could definitely tell he was, he
loved music.
Yeah.
He loved making music.
Yeah.
He loved being exposed to different types of music and being open to it, and advocating for, for his Native American roots. Wasn't afraid to go there, in a time when it may not have been too popular. But he was always someone who kind of stood on his laurels. That was it, for better or for worse. He did it.
Such a loss. I am profoundly sad that he's gone, but the music obviously speaks for itself, and we'll always have that.
Yeah.
So that'll stay with us, and God bless you, Robbie.
Yeah. I'm so happy that we kind of discovered it when we did, and are able now to continue to kind of treasure it. I almost feel jealous for someone that listens to this now and hasn't heard it yet, and is able to make that connection. That's going to be hopefully something very special for them. I hope. If not, it's okay too. But this is one of those ones, and Robbie was one of those artists that just kind of was always there, always in the background, and just kind of always doing things. And it's like, oh, Robbie Robertson. Oh, he did this. He did Casino. I was like, oh shit, Robbie. Just kind of always popping his head up. So go check this album out. It's Robbie Robertson. It's his first solo album. So it's just self-titled Robbie Robertson. It's got the nice, beautiful sepia tone cover on it, and the stuff.
He had that great head of hair, man.
Always the tousled hair. Yeah, the tousled hair.
How that hair just blends in with the clouds, and then on that cover, it's so brilliant. It's a brilliant cover.
He had a great always to the end. His hair was like, the guy never lost his hair. He always had his hair.
No, and it was. I mean, I don't know if he dyed it or whatever.
I'm sure he did, but it was a great,
but it still looked good.
Yeah. He pulled it off because he still looked young. It didn't look like, I mean, he may have had, I don't know if he had work done, but he didn't look like he did.
I don't know.
He kind of looked his age. He looked like, okay, he's older. He's an older guy, you know?
Yeah.
He didn't have like the stretched face if he did get a little bit.
That's right. Yeah.
I don't know that he's that vain to do it, but who knows? But farewell, Robbie Robertson, and thank you for all the great music. It's just,
it's something special.
It's stuff that we both treasure. And we gushed about him in this episode, but he deserves it. And this is one of the reasons why we do this show.
That's right.
Sometimes open it up a little bit and put our hearts on our sleeve. That's what
it's all about.
The beauty of music is when it's done right, no matter what genre it is, and you've got, if you've got that for you, I'm happy. If you've got music in your life that makes you feel a certain way or can bring out certain things, there's nothing better, right? There's nothing better in music.
Nope.
Special stuff. That's going to do it for this episode. Find this album. It's on all the streaming services. So it is out there for you. So go check it out. We implore you. We won't beg, but we implore you to check this one out. So Robbie Robertson solo album from 1987. Check it out. Front to back to front. It's a great one. So that'll do it for this episode of the 3324 podcast. For Eric, this has been Dean. We will absolutely catch you on the flip side.